Mr. Levine, how would you, if elected comptroller, audit these new involuntary committal rules? 60 seconds.
As I've said, we have a mental health crisis in New York. It's playing out on the streets, on the subways, in the parks. And it is because we have stopped investing in long-term mental health care. We have not invested adequately in services like supportive housing. And I've made restarting those investments one of the central planks of my campaign. But, you know, the tragedy of mental health, mental illness, is that people often don't want treatment. And so sometimes we are going to have to bring people in involuntarily. And that is not easy to do. But it is necessary, often for the benefit of the patient. It can save the life of a patient and help stabilize someone. And I do agree that we needed to sharpen the rules around when and how that can be done. So I do applaud the recent changes. However, there's got to be due process. And if I sense that this is not being applied in a prudent way, then absolutely I will aim the audit tool there.
Thank you both. We're about halfway home, and Dan has the next question.
We're going to move on to the issue of rent-stabilized apartments, gentlemen, which have been in the news this week, as you both know. The Rent Guidelines Board is about to vote on if there should be a rent increase for the million units of stabilized housing. So, Mr. Levine, where do you stand on a rent freeze and its possible ripple effects to landlords? You have 60 seconds.
We have an epic housing affordability crisis. Tenants are really suffering right now. And we've had recent years where the increases have exceeded the rate of inflation. And I think to avoid more pain on tenants at a very difficult time, we should have a rent freeze this year. I want to acknowledge this is also a very difficult time for small landlords, and their costs have been going up, whether it's property taxes, water bills, energy costs. And I will fight as comptroller to help rein in those costs as well. I am sensitive to the needs of small owners while never taking my eye off the true crisis that tenants are facing in New York.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, where do you stand on a rent freeze and its possible ripple effects to landlords? You also have 60 seconds here.
Look, our government has very few tools as direct as this to actually help people in the midst of an affordability crisis, right? Very few tools where we can push a button and we can freeze someone's rent. So in a moment like this, we've got to freeze the rent. We have to also do more work with Albany to make sure that our small landlords are getting the support that they need. I represent a lot of small landlords in southern Brooklyn, and they want to make repairs to their homes, and they can't. But at a moment like this, we cannot be raising the rent on people. The data shows it. You got to follow the data. There's a very, very rare situation where we can hit a button and freeze the rent. For so many New Yorkers, you got to do it.
Okay. And Mr. Levine, just a quick follow-up here. How long should a rent freeze actually last? 15 seconds.
Well, this is a decision made every year based on economic data, based on cost of living measures, and I think it should be analyzed year to year, and that's how I would approach it.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, same question to you. How long should a rent freeze last? 15 seconds.
Yeah, you have to analyze it on a year-by-year basis and base it on the merits.
So both of you saying 1 year for now. One more question on the topic of housing, because it is so important. There are tens of thousands, right, of these deeply affordable units off the market right now because landlords say they need, like we talked about, to make these substantial renovations that they simply cannot afford at this time. So, Mr. Levine, should the pension fund be used to help fix up these apartments for rent? You have 30 seconds here.
You identified a real problem. There certainly are thousands of units in rent-stabilized buildings which should be on the market and are not. Usually these have been occupied for a long time. They have very, very high costs to renovate. So we have a problem here. We've got to solve this problem. There have been various fixes in Albany that would, I think, get some of these units back on the market. I think that's very important because we do have a housing crisis. I think in terms of investing pension money, again, I laid my standard out. We got to make sure we're protecting the assets of our retirees and that we're getting good returns. If we could do that and meet that standard and get these apartments back on the market, then I would be open to it.
Yes or no?
But I think I need to look more closely at it.
Okay, Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, should the pension fund be used to help fix up these apartments? 30 seconds to you.
I mean, look, I'd have to see a proposal. If it's something that would work and we could actually get at least a 7% return for our pension funds, then we can have a conversation with the trustees. But if we can't, we can't. I will never use the pension funds as my personal piggy bank. It's got to make, number one, your main job as comptroller is to be a fiduciary, a chief custodian for the pension funds. Your main responsibility is delivering those strong, stable investment returns for retirees. That's it. You can't use the pension funds as your piggy bank.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. And Henry has the next question.
Thank you, Dan. Many United States companies have been doing away with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs over the last 2 years. The comptroller's office, so everyone knows, certifies billions of dollars in city contracts each and every year. Mr. Brannan, should New York City be doing business with any company that lacks a clear DEI policy? 60 seconds.
Now, this is a time for New York City to stand up and show who we are and to wear our hearts on our sleeves and wear our values. We're not going to hide under the bed for the next 4 years because there's a fake dictator in Washington. We've got to be willing to fight fire with fire and leverage the power that we have with an almost $300 billion pension system to say, look, if you want to do business with the city of New York, here's what you're going to need to do. And if you don't do it, we're going to take our business somewhere else. We've got to be willing to rattle that saber and stand up for ourselves. We will not cower. New Yorkers do not hide when things get tough. And this is a moment where we've got to stand up and be counted.
So you would establish a clear DEI standard for certifying businesses?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Levine, same question to you, sir. 60 seconds. Should New York City do business with any company that does not have a clear DEI policy? 60 seconds.
I totally reject Donald Trump's assault on the values of diversity and equity and inclusion. These are values which have made New York stronger and made America stronger. I will use the power of the comptroller office to defend those values. I will form a coalition of blue city and blue state pension funds around the country. Collectively, we control over $3 trillion in assets, to go to CEOs as shareholders and say, we will not allow you to give in to Trump's pressure to abandon commitments to diversity. And I will use the power over contracting to ensure that no company gets a contract with New York that doesn't adhere to the letter and spirit of our extremely strong human rights laws in New York and New York State, which we should not retreat on. We should double down on them so the companies getting our contracts reflect our values.
So to be clear, it wouldn't just be the coalition. You would enforce New York standards individually?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Dan has the next question.
Our debate partners over at LD Audio will have the next question. So here is Edwin Martinez.
Earlier this month, a federal judge appointed a remediation manager to focus on achieving reforms at Rikers Island. How would you work with the City Hall and remediation manager to ensure the reforms finally get implemented?
And thank you to Edwin. So, Mr. Levine, coming to you first, hearing that question, how would you help reform Rikers Island? 60 seconds to you.
Primeramente, Edwin, gusto de verlo. I've visited Rikers several times. It is a horror. It should shock the conscience of every New Yorker. We've already had 5 people die at Rikers this year. The conditions there are unacceptable. Now, we've passed a milestone in which there's judicial management of the system that does remove control from the city and also perhaps limits the comptroller's direct role there as well. But I will use every power I have to continue to shine a light on the human rights catastrophe there, to ensure that this court-appointed manager does right by our city, and to not shy away from the ugly truth of what's happening there.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, hearing that question, how would you make sure the reforms finally get implemented at Rikers Island? 60 seconds to you here.
So earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, I don't remember, there's been so many budget hearings, but we obviously grilled the Department of Corrections. Look, it's clear that this administration has no interest in closing Rikers. They're throwing everything in our way. They're trying to obstruct every path we take to try to keep Rikers open. Rikers has to close. I voted to close Rikers. I voted for the Borough jail plan. We have to see it through. Maybe not with this administration, but we have to hold the next administration's feet to the fire to close down Rikers Island. It's a humanitarian crisis. What's happening there is horrible. The fact that it's continued this long is completely insane. This administration has no interest in closing Rikers Island.
So it's not about reform for you at this point if you were to win as comptroller. It's about closing Rikers Island.
We have to close Rikers Island.
And that brings us to Henry with the next question.
Yeah, let's talk about closing Rikers Island and building those smaller borough-based jails around the city. The cost of doing that really has ballooned ballooned in recent years from an initial $8 billion budget to approximately a $16 billion budget. At the same time, the jail population has also increased, meaning when and if these smaller jails get built, they can't hold everyone in custody right now. If elected as the city's top money man, how would you help control the cost of building these jails? Mr. Brannan, coming to you first. 60 seconds.
Sure. Part of the problem is that there's a very high price for doing nothing. While Eric Adams has kicked the can down the road for not closing Rikers, things have gotten more expensive. It's a pretty easy scenario here. We're waiting too long to get this going, and that's why in the meantime the costs are going up. So I think we need to hit reset here to figure out how we move forward, because those costs will keep going up, and we can't have the next administration come in and use the same excuses to kick the can down the road. But clearly this is an example, a perfect example of a time where doing nothing is very, very costly.
Is there any way to bring the cost down, or has that moment passed and we're just trying to stay at $16 billion?
I think we should get in there and try to bring the cost down, sure, if we can. I mean, part of the reason why the costs are so high is because no one wants to do business with the city, because it's so hard to do business with the city. That's why the costs are so high. So we've got to figure that out.
Mr. Levine, if elected the city's top money man, what would you do to try and reduce the cost of building these borough-based jails? 60 seconds.
Well, I laid out the moral stakes here and why I voted to close Rikers Island and still think that we have no choice and that borough-based jails are a better alternative. But I have to say, we have a challenge right now. We're nowhere near the legal timeline. We have no chance of meeting it. And we're way over budget. And I have to say, I'm extremely disappointed at how community stakeholders have been treated, particularly in Chinatown, in Manhattan, which I know best, but in some of the other boroughs as well. So we're going to need a revision to this plan. We cannot meet the current timeline. We have capacity issues. And yes, we have a budget challenge. So I will fight to get us to a better place where we have a realistic timeline, where we have more respect for communities, and where we have budgets that are more realistic.
Do you think the cost can come down or no?
It has to. It warrants a longer discussion. The capital process in New York is broken. We are paying far too much for all kinds of infrastructure upgrades. Unfortunately, this is no exception. I have many thoughts on how we can do that, which I would certainly apply in the case of these jails.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Coming to Dan now.
And for our next question, gentlemen, we're going to go to another one of our debate partners, Julia Papa from 1010 Wins.
Much has been made of the relationship between the current comptroller, Brad Lander, and Mayor Eric Adams. The two often have seemed at odds.
With the drip, drip, drip of FBI raids and federal prosecutor investigations.
The loudest, I think Eric should, the loudest person in the city.
New Yorkers are not getting the focused, trustworthy leadership that they deserve and that they need.
Stop trying to be the shadow mayor and be the controller.
The question for you, has the relationship between Mayor Adams and Comptroller Lander been effective for New Yorkers?
And thank you to Juliet Papa for that very question. So, Mr. Lean, coming to you first here. As Juliet asked, has the relationship between Adams and Lander been effective for New Yorkers? And what kind of relationship would you seek to establish with the next mayor? 60 seconds here.
I have to say, every time I see that clip of the mayor making fun of the comptroller's voice, I'm just disgusted. And Comptroller Lander has done what a comptroller is supposed to do, which is hold the mayor accountable, hold every city agency accountable, and using all the tools at their disposal, including audit, oversight, investigation, subpoena power if necessary. This is the job of the comptroller. This is the kind of comptroller I will be. I will be fiercely independent of whoever the next mayor is. I will fight for New Yorkers, and I will use the powers of the office to ensure that taxpayers get value for their money, that New Yorkers get the services they deserve, that we are vigilant against corruption, that our city doesn't cower in the face of threats from Donald Trump. This is who I have been throughout my whole career. It's who I will be as comptroller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brannan, has the relationship between Mr. Adams and Mr. Lander been effective for New Yorkers, as Juliet asked? And what kind of relationship would you seek to establish with the next mayor? 60 seconds to you.
Look, inherently, the job of the controller is to hold the mayor accountable. Whether the mayor is your best friend or your mortal enemy, it's not personal. Your job is to hold the mayor accountable, to be that independent watchdog, to be unbought and unbossed and answer only to the taxpayers. So I think Brad has done a great job. Certainly, I think once people start thinking about running for mayor, things take a different turn or a different tenor. But your job is to stand up for New Yorkers. If the mayor does something great, then you tell him you did a great job. If he did something wrong, you got to come after him and you got to hold him accountable. And that's what I've done. Don't just take my word for it, though. I've actually done it. For the past 3.5 years, I've fought every day. My day job is to fight against Eric Adams. I'm the only guy in this race that's called for Eric Adams to resign. I'm the only guy that stood up to Eric Adams' budget cuts. No one else has. Just me. The facts are the facts.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, 30 seconds rebuttal here.
I predicted we'd hear this several times tonight. Turns out I was right. There's only one person on this stage who endorsed Eric Adams for mayor, who campaigned passionately for him, who sought his endorsement for re-election, who received his endorsement for re-election. That is the council member. It's not me. I have stood up to this mayor again and again. I laid out many of the causes I fought for, and I will continue to stand up to this mayor and to whoever the next mayor is as well.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I endorsed Eric Adams in 2021, and then I called on him to resign. I'm the only guy in this race who called on Eric Adams to resign. No matter what the borough president says, I'm the only guy that's called on him to resign. The borough president could call him in to resign right now if he wants to, but for whatever reason, he does not. I will take on anybody. I am unbought, unbossed, and independent. Even though I endorsed Eric Adams, I still came after him.
Thank you, Mr. Brannan. Mr. Levine, 15 seconds to respond to that.
It's very simple. The council member got the mayor he wanted. The rest of us got screwed.
Okay, Mr. Levine, thank you. A quick follow-up question here for both of you on this topic. Do you want to eventually become the mayor of New York City? Mr. Levine, 15 seconds here.
No. Could have run for mayor this year. Could have run for a safe re-election to borough president. I'm running for my dream job. Really, this is what I've been working for my whole career. I want to be the comptroller of New York, and it's a job that I will relish, not one that I will use as a launching pad.
So it's a no to eventually becoming mayor. Mr. Brannan, same question to you. Do you want to eventually be mayor of New York City? 15 seconds here.
No, I want to be the controller. I would not be running for controller if I didn't have the experience of being the finance chair for the past 3.5 years. I'm not going to sit up here and lie that I've been dreaming about being the controller since I was a little kid. I'm running for controller because in this moment, we need a fighter, and I'm that fighter.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. And gentleman, Henry has the next question.
Thank you, Dan. Let's talk about a potential future mayor. The leading candidate in every New York City mayoral poll thus far on the Democratic side is former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Pix 11's own poll just yesterday, in fact, showed him ultimately winning the race by about 8 points after several rounds of ranked choice voting. Mr. Cuomo has a very long history of public service, as we all know, though he did resign in scandal nearly 4 years ago. Mr. Brannan, beginning with you, do you have any reservations about Andrew Cuomo becoming the next mayor? 60 seconds.
Look, I think being mayor is very different than being the governor, so it's a very different job. But I haven't made a decision yet about who I'm supporting. I am also a New Yorker, and I care very much about who our next mayor is, so I haven't made a decision about that. I'm still taking a look at the field, so I'm not making an endorsement at this time.
No reservations about him being mayor, though? Forget who you're endorsing. Do you have any concerns?
Of course I have concerns.
Okay. Mr. Levine, same question to you. Any reservations about Mr. Cuomo becoming mayor? Up to 60 seconds.
Well, because I think it's extremely important that the next comptroller be totally independent of the mayor and perceived as well as totally independent of the mayor. I'm not going to be endorsing in this mayor's race. Not going to make an endorsement right now. There's a lot to weigh on former Governor Cuomo, and I know voters are sorting through it. But I'm not going to make any kind of definitive endorsement here tonight.
Following up on this, Mr. Brannan, coming back to you, if Mr. Cuomo wins the Democratic primary and you win this Democratic primary, you would be running on the same party line. So first, would you support him in November if he was the Democratic nominee and you were as well? And just mention concerns about Mr. Cuomo. What are those concerns? 30 seconds.
I'm a Democrat, so whoever wins the Democratic nomination, I will support for mayor. You know, I have concerns with some of the stuff that happened in Albany under his governorship.
Such as, sir?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. There's some stuff during COVID that was concerning. There's a lot of things that were concerning. But I would support, if he wins, I'm going to support him because he's a Democrat.
Mr. Levine, same question. If you're the Democratic nominee as comptroller and he's the Democratic nominee as mayor, would you support him in November? And what are some specific concerns you might have? Up to 30 seconds.
Well, I'm not going to presume the results of the mayor's race or the comptroller's race or any race until primary voters have made their voice heard. But I, as a Democrat, I will be supporting the Democratic slate in November, including the Democratic mayor.
Any specific concerns, sir?
I'm not going to make an endorsement tonight, and I'm not going to tip my hand on that. As I've said, there's a lot to weigh on Governor Cuomo, and I know that the voters are doing that now.
Thank you, sir. Dan?
Gentlemen, I want to talk about the all-important topic of childcare, which I know is a major expense for so many parents, right? With the average New York City family paying more than $18,000 each year for infants and toddlers. So, Mr. Levine, coming to you first on this important topic, you've said that it would cost $2 billion per year to ensure that universal childcare is done right. So how would you pay for that? You have 60 seconds, because the big question is how.
Yeah. Other than the cost of housing, the cost of childcare is the biggest driver of the affordability crisis in New York. And the estimates are that 80% of families struggle to pay that cost. And no moral society should allow that. New York City should not allow that. I put forward a plan that would extend UPK and 3K down to younger ages, beginning at 6 weeks, so that every single family who needs it has a free child care slot in their neighborhood. We do estimate the cost of this would be $2 billion. We think this could be phased in over several years. My first choice would be to find efficiencies in government, including by reining in excessive costs on outside contractors to recoup the money. This is less than 2% of the current city budget. This is doable, and I believe it's a moral imperative.
And you said you can guarantee it for those.
I think we should have guaranteed free child care for every family in New York City.
And is there a threshold salary requirement for that?
I think the model should be UPK, so that it's not means tested. There could still be private child care for those who choose to pay for it, just as there are private schools in K-12. But there should be an option that is free for every family, regardless of income.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, same question. You've actually proposed using pension funds to pay for universal child care. So can you explain why you see that as actually a good investment for those pension dollars? 60 seconds here.
Sure. I mean, look, universal child care, unfortunately, it should be done on the federal level, but we know that's not happening anytime soon. I think there are two pillars to our affordability crisis in the city right now. One of them is obviously lack of access to affordable housing, and the other is lack of access to affordable child care. You hear it every single day, that people are leaving the city because it's cheaper to put their kids into child care somewhere else. So I have a plan on my website to invest $500 million in pension funds. And it's a real estate play. We basically buy buildings in cooperation with the city and investors and set up a child care system in the city of New York. What we're seeing now is a free market failure where the providers are not getting paid enough. The parents are saying it's too expensive. This is the moment where the government needs to step in. These are the moments where the government needs to step in. And I think it would be a great investment, not just for retirees, for the workforce, for the economy, and for the future of the city.
How would you make the money back?
It's a real estate investment. The same way that the pension funds are investing in real estate now, as long as you're getting that 7% or 7.25% return, it's a great play. I'd have to convince the trustees of that, but it's worth doing.
Okay. Gentlemen, time flies when you are having fun, okay? So it is time for those closing statements. Mr. Brannan, we're going to begin with you first here. You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for watching tonight. If you tuned into a controller's debate on a Thursday night, it means you really care about the future of the city. Look, I am not your conventional candidate, right? I learned 3 chords in public school. It afforded me almost 10 years of my life touring the world in a band and as a musician, just because of those 3 chords that I learned in public school. New York right now, you need a fighter. You need someone who's willing to stand up, to speak truth to power, and to do the right thing even when no one is looking. I've stood up to Eric Adams for the past 3.5 years. I'm the only guy in this race that stood up to Eric Adams, and I'm going to stand up to Donald Trump, too. I'm going to fight just as hard for your family as I would fight for mine. I want to say hi to my mom, my wife, my dog. I'll see you soon. Let's go Knicks.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. And Mr. Levine, 60 seconds, too, for your closing statement.
This is a moment where many of New Yorkers are anxious. They're anxious about our future, about the challenges in New York City we've spoken about the threat that Donald Trump represents. And I want New Yorkers to know that I believe we can take on these challenges with strong leadership. Strong leadership that fights for results for New Yorkers. This is who I've been. I have been taking on big, complicated challenges for New York and scoring wins my entire career, since I was a public school teacher in the South Bronx, since I founded a community development credit union that's made $100 million in small loans, helping families uptown, since I won a historic legislative victory and getting every tenant in New York City access to an attorney when they face an eviction. I believe in New York. I believe in this city we love. I believe we will get through this. I believe the Knicks will win tonight and take the series in 7. Thank you.
There you go. And that was going to be my next question about the Knicks. But what we'd like to do around here is throw in a bonus question after closing statements, gentlemen. So are you ready for this one? 30 seconds to each of you. Mr. Brannan, coming to you first. What will you miss most about your old job if you were to win?
Look, being paid to worry about the neighborhood where I grew up is one of the best things in the world. Being the local politician in the neighborhood is great. Being able to build 7 new public schools in my district, renovating parks and playgrounds that I grew up playing in that weren't renovated since then. It's just being in the city council is a great job, but I've really learned the power of the budget and the way that we can make life easier for New Yorkers with the budget. So I'm ready to be the next comptroller.
Thank you. And Mr. Levine, what will you miss most about your old job?
Well, you might not be surprised to hear that the Manhattan Borough President loves Manhattan. The vibrancy, the intensity, the diversity. I love it. I love every neighborhood. I love every inch of it. And to spend the last 4 years waking up every morning fighting for this borough has been an absolute joy. I'll continue to fight for Manhattan and hopefully all 5 boroughs, but I'll miss being the Manhattan Borough President.
Mr. Levine, thank you. And thank you at home for watching this official Democratic primary debate for New York City Comptroller. I want to thank both of the candidates for joining us tonight. Let's go Knicks. Our partners, Julia Papa from 1010 Wins, Edward Martinez from El Diario for their questions, and of course my colleague right here, Henry Rossoff.